breaking down all the plays and getting you in the action. We've got you covered all season long. Welcome to the BCSN Nation podcast, powered by Marco's Pizza.
Hello and welcome everyone to the latest edition of the BCSN Nation podcast. It is episode 11, heading towards the end of October. I'm Justin Feldkamp alongside Pat Cacciardo. And Pat, it is playoff time. You battle for 10 straight weeks. You reap the rewards here in the postseason.
Yeah, there's a lot of great teams in the playoffs here in Northwest Ohio. This is going to be a great opening week of the playoffs and an extra opening week of the playoffs for the second year in a row.
Yep, 16 teams in each region. We'll talk about that coming up. We'll also have the Player of the Week, playoff matchup breakdowns, the question of the week, student section of the week as we conclude 10 weeks of student sections. And then our game of the week is Findlay at Perrysburg, local versus local in the first round in Division I, Region 2. All right, where can you find us? You can find our BCSN social media platforms on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all of them at BCSN Sports, at BCSN Sports. New episodes of this podcast drop each and every Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, bcsnnation.com/podcast. All right, let's take a look at the Player of the Week. And Pat, he is a kid that we have had our eyes on the Tailgate Show for a number of weeks. He was a top recruit. Featured segment back in the first month of the season. His name is Braden Alls. He's on the 9-1 Central Catholic Fighting Irish. He plays on both sides of the ball, primarily on defense. Braden Alls has been a playmaker and a difference maker for Central Catholic. That's why he is a future UT Rocket.
Yeah, he reminds you of a Charles Woodson. He reminds you of the guy that you want to have on the field as much as possible.
Yep.
Deion Sanders is another one that just comes to mind because as great as he is defensively, you want to get him the ball. You want to get him involved in the kick return game, whether it's kickoff return or punt return, and get the ball in his hands as much as possible because he can flip the scoreboard quick. He's doing a great job at safety. He moves well off the hash. He's fun to watch as a football coach. He's fun to watch defensively. He'll come up and hit you and fill the alleys. The other thing is you get him on the other side of the ball, and you want to get him 10 touches on the other side of the ball because you know, hey, there's a potential of 4 or 5 of those going for a score.
How can that be effective in the playoffs? Because you want to manage his time on the field so he's well rested. And for Central Catholic, a program that is used to deep playoff runs, they made it to the regional finals last year. When you have a player who occasionally plays on offense, but in bigger games, you use him more.
Yeah, this is win or go home. It's all hands on deck. There's no time management like LeBron's trying to do. Anything like that. You want to play every game, and you have to move forward. So this is a game that we're not going to do time management with him. We're going to use him every chance we get because it's win in advance, and that's all that matters right now in the state playoffs.
So he had an interception in the rivalry game against St. Francis. So Braden Alls very deserving of our Player of the Week honor from Charlie's Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram. That was 19 Irish Night trophies in a row for Central. They finish off the track with 32 straight wins as the track dissolves after this academic year. So Central Catholic definitely went out with a bang. We'll get to their first round playoff matchup in Division II here in just a second. All right, time for our next segment.
It's time for the BCSN Nation podcast student section review. Send us your photos or videos of your school's student section using the @BCSN Sports and hashtag #SSOTW on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok.
All right, as we wrap up the regular season, congratulations to all of our student section of the week winners. After 10 weeks, we had a 4-way tie for first place. Central Catholic, Maumee, Whitmer, and Perrysburg all took home 2 Student of the Week honors. And Pat, we are at these tailgate sites, the games of the week, each and every week. And to see the turnout that the students bring, the cheerleaders bring, the band brings, not only to our set right behind on tailgate, but in the student section. We were just at Northview-Southview matchup at Northview last week. Not a seat to be had. Fully packed stands, student sections just bursting at the seams.
Yeah, a lot of great support for their home teams. And I've said it before, it is really cool to go to an Anthony Wayne game and a Perrysburg game right now. Those two teams, they travel extremely well, whether they're home or on the road. And then I would say they're 1 and 2 or 1A, 1B. And then Whitmer is a close. They're the next student section that travels extremely well. And it's been so fun to watch those games, among many others. Like you mentioned, Northview, Southview was a great game to be at. But the atmosphere is just a little bit different. Whatever they're doing at Perrysburg and at Anthony Wayne, I'd love to see more teams, more communities get involved the way that those two do, because they have a perfect blueprint for supporting Friday night football.
All right, so good luck to all of those teams as they vie for the student section of the season. We'll see who comes out on top, and then we recognize those students and those student sections come June when we have our academic awards season when it comes to BCSN honors. We're looking forward to that each and every year. TikTok, it's the place to be. At BCSN Sports, we have surpassed 5,000 followers. So thank you for all of those supporting groups. We try to post as much as we can to all of these social media platforms. You can see all types of clips, facts, information, student section stuff each and every time. So hashtag SSOTW to get our attention. Interact with us here at BCSN. Okay, we mentioned it's playoff time, Pat. We're going to go bracket to bracket, Division 1 through 7. So let's start cranking it out. We'll start in Division 1, Region 2. Area teams in that region, Whitmer, Perrysburg, and Findlay. We'll talk about Perrysburg and Findlay coming up because they're the game of the week. But Whitmer, they tried to get a home game based on their overall success with a 7-3 record. Came up just short. They got the 9 seed. They're going on the road to the 8 seed down to Powell. That's north of Columbus. They're going to take on Olentangy Liberty.
Yeah, Olentangy's got some great football teams down there. Their community is so big. They've now split into 4 different high schools. Liberty, I believe, is the original one. At Springfield, we played them a couple years back, and it was a great matchup. Whitmer should have no problem with this win. I feel very comfortable. I feel very comfortable with Whitmer's diversity offensively, and as well as they play defense. I think that they'll come away with a big win this week and move on into the second round of the playoffs. And
Whitmer has battled. They've played tough competition. Within the track, you're going to play tough competition, but they've played teams like Dublin Jerome, who came up to Whitmer. That was a game all the way into the 4th quarter, and wouldn't you know it, in the second round of the playoffs, assuming you are correct with the first round victory, in all likelihood, Dublin Jerome, the 1 seed, would beat the 16 seed Lewis Center Olentangy. So we could get a rematch. And not only that, but we also saw Perrysburg face Dublin Jerome in week 1 at Dublin Jerome, came up short 24-21. So there's quite a bit of parity even in Division 1 first and second rounds.
Yeah, and I think Whitmer would love to get into that second round and love to have a little revenge.
Yep, they would be at Dublin Jerome. A reminder, top 16 seeds, the top 8, and then the top 4. Top 4, if you stay in it, you would get not 1 but 2 home games. So we'll see if Whitmer and Ken Winters can get into the second round. As we mentioned, Perrysburg and Findlay, we'll talk about that one here in just a second. All right, Region 6, that is Division 2. This is where we have a ton of local teams. 16 teams in that region. 6 of them are from Northwest Ohio. The list, Fremont Ross, Anthony Wayne, St. John's, Clay, Central Catholic, and Southview. All right, none of those teams are facing off against each other. So it's local team versus primarily Cleveland area teams. So Fremont Ross, they get a home game, 8 seed. They had a home game last year. They're taking on North Royalton, and we know the high-powered offense that Fremont Ross has. And I was listening to the game broadcast on the radio as I was driving around to different games, getting some highlights last Friday, and the commentators for Fremont Ross's broadcast were saying how Caden Holmes, their quarterback, looks fresher, looks as good as he's been since the first part of the season, because he was banged up there and was still performing, still delivering, but he just wasn't 100%, and no one's going to be 100% in week 1 of the playoffs, but Caden Holmes looks better, looks fresher, looks healthier.
He definitely has gotten healthy as the seasons move forward. He's lively in the pocket now. He's able to extend plays and make things happen. I like Fremont in this game, and this is going to be a tough matchup for them. But Fremont with a fresh Caden Holmes and him running and throwing the football, I like Fremont in this one.
You've been in the playoffs a number of times as a head coach. Tell me what it's like, going the coach's perspective of facing these teams that are 2 hours away from you. There's a really lack of familiarity.
Right, there is, but you have to do a lot of film study and a little extra time with the kids. And I always hate to say do extra time as a football coach, because you should be putting in time every week. It doesn't matter who your opponent is. But the reason that you put a little bit of extra time in is because of the unfamiliarity with the team that you have. Okay, so it's always good for those kids to have a little bit more that's at stake for that particular game, you know. And so film study, practice time, things like that. You know, the time frame's going to be the same, but you got to put a little bit more emphasis on this team because you don't know them as well as you might a local team. Yeah,
a little more intensity, a little more attention to detail, I'd imagine.
Getting the opportunity to travel to these places is great as well. I can remember our first playoff game at Cleveland Glenville years ago, and one of the local teams is playing Glenville. We'll talk to them about them shortly, but that was a great trip to drive all the way across to Cleveland. And Cleveland Glenville, what a tradition they have there with Ted Ginn and all the things that they've done. But for your kids to experience that type, especially when it's their first time.
All right, also in that region, in the same top part bracket, Anthony Wayne. They got the 4 seed, and they are 9-1. They're taking on a North Ridgeville team. We saw last year we were at Anthony Wayne for a tailgate in round 1 of the playoffs. They took on Rhodes, had no problem with them. The field was a god-awful mess. Hopefully we don't get that this week. But Anthony Wayne, very deserving of that 4 seed. So they win. They're going to get another home game as well.
Yeah, and I like Anthony Wayne in this game. They have got to get steady quarterback play, and we know that their quarterback's been a revolving door over the last 10 weeks.
Grant Kinney is back. I've seen him back.
And yes, their starter is back, but he obviously is going to be a little rusty. Yep. When you get into the playoffs, okay, you're going to need, again, all hands on deck. Joe Caswell is a phenomenal running back, as we all know, but they're going to need a 1-2 punch. They may even need a 3-4, maybe not this week in week 1. I really like Anthony Wayne in this matchup, but as you progress through the playoffs, you have to be a little bit more diverse.
Yep, Anthony Wayne, 9-1. Their defense is going to show up. We talk about Andy Brungard and their coach's defensive staff and how great of a job they do. So the defense is going to travel, but they don't need to travel this Friday or next Friday, assuming a victory. If they do advance, they could face St. John's in a rematch, and that game was a low-scoring game, 10-7. Anthony Wayne edged out St. John's, but we've been talking about St. John's and how they are battle-tested, a tough schedule the first part of the season, but at the end of 10 games, they're dead even, 5-5. You could make an argument they're the best 12 seed in the entire state. They are going on the road to Olmsted Falls. So a 12-5 seed matchup, you know, in the NCAA tournament, you always have the men's and women's games where you say a 12 seed, check out for that upset. And we've already seen St. John's do it before. They went on the road last year and got a first-round win in a similar scenario.
Yeah, and just like we talked about Caden Holmes, Blake Lichtenberg is starting to progress even more than he started the season. And I think he's hitting his stride. If he can keep throwing and running the football with that dual threat that he does, the St. John's could come up with an upset. Now, Olmsted Falls has great tradition, as we all know, and they're a good football team. But just like you'd mentioned, this is an upset alert.
Yeah, they have Maddie Swift. They have Jackson Turner. They have Aaron Lovett. They have guys who have progressively gotten better and made a better impact, a stronger impact from game to game.
Yeah, and St. John's and their offensive line has progressed through the year. They were really struggling, and Blake was under some pressure that he shouldn't have been under, and they have progressed, and they're doing a great job as the year progresses. And what a great time to be playing your best football as you're moving into week 1 of the playoffs.
Clay is the 15 seed. Congratulations to them. 5-5 record got them into the postseason. They went through the gauntlet in the track, played better, were in games into the second half, into the fourth quarter, pulled out some victories. They definitely earned their spot in the playoffs. They have a challenge ahead in the 2 seed, Medina Highland. They're 10-0. If you guys remember from last year, Medina Highland was the team that Central Catholic played. Walk-off field goal for Central Catholic. But as you mentioned, these traditional powers from the Cleveland area, Olmsted Falls, and Medina Highland also falls into that category.
Yeah, Clay has a puncher's chance because of
Mason 𝗍𝗀.
Mason 𝗍𝗀 is, in my opinion, by far the best pure thrower in Northwest Ohio. He has great form. He has great technique. I love watching him throw. I try to watch as much as I can when Clay's on BCSN and get a chance to watch him just because I love the way he plays the game. I love the way they call offense there, too.
Yep.
Coach 𝗍𝗀 has done a phenomenal job of transforming his offense. We used to do 7-on-7s with Clay all the time, and loved working with Coach, when we were at Springfield, and they would always bring, a good number there for 7-on-7s. I see a progression from what they used to do to what they're doing now in the different style of offense that they're running, and it's all built around what Mason 𝗍𝗀 can do. So they do have a tall task. Medina Highland is a great football team, and they are probably a 28-point favorite, but don't count out Clay High School because they have a quarterback and an offense that is moving the football and scoring points.
Yeah, and they have a mixture of upperclassmen and underclassmen in this experience. You talk about going on the road, developing that knowledge of what it takes to get to the postseason, developing the knowledge furthermore of, okay, now that we're in the playoffs, this is what it's like. This is the bus and the length of the bus trip, and this is what you got to do for game prep, et cetera, et cetera. So a valuable experience for Clay and the younger players who will be back next year. Central Catholic, we mentioned them at the beginning a little bit with Braden Knowles as the player of the week. Central, been there, done that. They're a 3 seed, should get 2 home games. They're taking on a 6-4 Ashland team. Based on previous experience, this should be a slam dunk, no problem victory for Central Catholic. Don't tell Greg Dempsey that, and the players aren't going to, he doesn't want the players to hear that, but they should advance. And then talking about Southview, a 6 seed, they went 8-2. They won that game of the week last week against their rival Northview. Their only 2 losses were to Perrysburg and to Anthony Wayne, and they get an Avon Lake team, the 6 seed, on the road. The Cougars have to travel in a return to the postseason in a valid form. Everybody made it in 2020, but Southview earned its way in with an 11 seed this year.
Yeah, as big of a task as Clay has against Medina Highland, Southview has an even bigger task against Avon Lake. Avon and Avon Lake are 2 of the best teams in that Northeast Ohio area in Division II. Traditionally, you just see them at the top of the playoff standings year in and year out, and one of the biggest games on that side of the state is the Avon Lake game. Sylvania Southview, as we just saw last week, what a great atmosphere it was over at Sylvania Northview to be able to watch that game and be a part of that. And Southview took care of business as they should have. They were definitely the favorite in that game. And I thought Northview played a great game against them.
Yep.
and stayed in there in a rivalry game. But this is going to be a tall task. Sylvania's going to need every one of those 70 points that they have under their belt from previous, and that confidence that they're going to need. And defensively, they're really going to need to step their game up defensively to have a chance in this one.
One interesting fact I wanted to bring up to you, Pat, about that Southview-Northview matchup. Southview used 2 two-point conversions out of a formation to kick an extra point, were successful, and they used a first quarter onside kick. And I followed up with Coach Hardy later on the weekend, and he said Avon Lake is now going to have to take some time during the practice week to think about what we put on film. I thought that was really interesting, kind of a progressive foresight into the postseason, because at that point Southview had already clinched a playoff spot. So whoever they were going to face, it's just an interesting kind of strategy, tit for tat, okay, a little challenge to the other coaching staff.
Right. There's 2 rules or 2 ways to think about that. Number one, you save it in your back pocket when you need it. Okay, and they may not have needed it at that time. I didn't see the context that they used it in just yet. But the other thing, too, is very true. When we were coaching at Springfield, we ran our entire offense in both of the scrimmages, the preseason scrimmages that we had. We really didn't save anything for that exact reason. We're going to make them have to prepare and take time to look at all these different things that Springfield does offensively, and they're not going to prepare for what we do best. Okay, they're going to prepare for all this, and then, you're always focused on a few things against a specific team and where you find weaknesses and what you think you do best. So 2 rules of thought: could have saved it, or, make them prepare for it and not spend as much time on some of the other things that they do best.
All right, let's move to Region 10. That's Division 3. One BCSN footprint team in there. That would be Toledo Scott out of the City League, the unbeaten City League champs, 8-2 record. Coach Rashawn Wilson has done a great job there in year 2. They earned a 9 seed. They're going on the road to the 8 seed. That'd be Rocky River Lutheran West. But hats off to them. An 8-2 record, solid performances. They've played even in their losses. They've played tight games. And they don't have a huge roster, Pat, but they have effective playmakers who you get them the ball in space. Nyquan Williams, Darrell Barnett, Carnell Smith's the quarterback. They have an understanding and a chemistry on the field that really shows up.
Yeah, and the players can't worry about scheduling. You know, sometimes that came up like, yeah, they really haven't played anybody yet. The players, you play who's in front of you. You don't have any control over that. And what they've done throughout the year is gain a tremendous amount of confidence for a team that has traditionally been down the past few years. And so when the players are saying, hey, we're winning games and we believe in our coach and we're moving forward and this is a lot of fun and school's fun and the community's fun and all these type of things are happening, they have an opportunity right now to win a playoff game against a pretty good Rocky River team. And you know, I like Scott's odds on this. I think it's going to come down to the traditional things where, man, they can't turn the football over.
Yeah.
You know, the kicking game is going to be huge in this type of thing, and they're going to have to play good defense.
Yep, it's a 9-8 seed. It's not like they're a 15 seed. I mean, they got a shot. They got a shot.
Right.
Also in that, Defiance, Tiffin Columbian, and then Clyde. Clyde is a 3 seed. We've seen Clyde win it all in the past 5 years, and they have a shot to go on another playoff run because they play one of the most difficult schedules in Northwest Ohio, Central North Ohio. With the Flyers there. Let's go to Region 14. That is Division 4. We got Napoleon, Bellevue, Bryan, Upper Sandusky, Shelby, Perkins, and Wauseon. We'll focus on a few of them there. But Napoleon, I know that was one of the surprise teams that we discussed on Tailgate early on in the season. They got a 16 seed. They squeaked in, and they are taking on Cleveland Glenville, who we touched upon earlier.
Yeah, they were one of my surprise teams before the season started. I really wanted to see them do well. And I think that they have progressed. Coach Strock and his staff from previous years, I think they kind of kept the train rolling with a few new twists. And Napoleon's, I think they're in for a shock a little bit when they go out to Cleveland Glenville. I've been there, done that. Yeah. And, you know, we got up on them early, 28-14, and then gosh, I want to say that the floodgates just opened from Cleveland Glenville, and those athletes were phenomenal. Coach Ginn does a great job with his athletes and how they prepare for games, and it is a tough task to go play at Collingwood High School against Cleveland Glenville. Still,
it'd be a good experience for them,
yes.
Like we mentioned with Clay, underclassmen who are coming back next year to get this playoff experience. You build upon it.
Yes.
Bellevue is a team. They got a lot to play for. If football aficionados remember, Bellevue was a 1 seed last year, the only 1 seed in the entire state that lost to a 16 seed in Edison. So it was kind of a local versus local team there. So there was a lot of familiarity, and it was a 1-point game, but Bellevue has a lot to play for this time around. And then Perkins, we wanted to touch upon them because they're a 3 seed. They're 9-1. They've been state ranked for a while. We saw Port Clinton somewhat be of a surprise team, made it all the way to the state semifinals, I believe, definitely the regional finals, if my memory serves me correctly. I think Perkins could be this type of team. The Pirates have a great quarterback in Logan Lesh. He's diversifying his distribution of the football, a lot of different playmakers. Perkins could be a team as a 3 seed. If the seeds hold, they would take on Millersburg West Holmes, the 2 seed, who is undefeated. But Perkins has a shot.
Yeah, and the other thing about Perkins, that you're right, their offense and scheme is extremely advanced, but defensively, again, they're playing good defense right now, and they're probably playing their best defense. So, again, moving into the playoffs, best time to be at your peak, especially defensively.
All right, Region 18, that's Division 5. This has a lot of Northwest Ohio teams, not necessarily hyper-local to the BCSN Toledo footprint, but there are a ton of local teams in this setup out of the NWOAL, some teams out of the BCSN Erie Sandusky market. We talked about Port Clinton. They're a 16 seed. They're going to take on Liberty Center. Let's talk about Liberty Center and Eastwood, Genoa, Oak Harbor here briefly, Pat. Liberty Center, Casey Moeller. I tell you what, Rex Lindgren, who was the head coach a long time for Liberty Center, Casey Moeller was underneath him as an assistant. And sometimes you have not necessarily a fear, but you don't want to be the guy who replaces the guy. Casey Moeller was that, and he has lived up to it, and he has done a fantastic job. No state championships yet, which is a tall task, but they've gone on deep playoff runs after deep playoff runs in the time that he has been there, and now they're undefeated. They're the 1 seed. Their defense is incredibly impressive. I think they played 10 games, multiple shutouts. Only 2 teams have scored touchdowns against them. Liberty Center is the real deal.
Yeah, and again, defense is where they hang their hat on, and like you said, they only have 2 teams that have scored more than 1 touchdown against them, and I believe that was Defiance in week 1, along with possibly Napoleon.
Yeah, Napoleon. Yep, Napoleon was the team.
And offensively, they're doing a lot of great things, but they hang their hat on great defense, and again, they're hitting their stride defensively.
If they win, assuming they do, they'd face on Archbold or Liberty Benton. Liberty Center and Archbold in the same league, the NWAL, and Liberty Center handled Archbold during the regular season. But when you have those rematches in the playoffs, nothing is given. And that 8-9 seed matchup, Archbold and Liberty Benton, I've seen both of those teams this season, 8-2, 7-3. Both have solid offenses. Both like to run the ball. Liberty Benton likes to pass a little bit more than Archbold does. Carson Dominique, the running back for Archbold, and then the Garlock twins at quarterback and receiver. Obviously, they have some chemistry, but this could be a fun matchup. I could see this game in the 30s and a tight 1-score game.
I agree, and Archibald, I think, is going to play some small ball and keep the Liberty Benton offense off the field, a lot like what Napoleon does, and they definitely can run the clock, and they definitely play good defense.
All right, the bottom part of this bracket, we got Elmwood a part of it, Eastwood a part of it, Oak Harbor, and Genoa. Let's go Oak Harbor, Genoa. This is a rematch. We had this as a game pick on Tailgate. It's a flip of the coin game. Because Genoa won on the road during the regular season by 2 points, and now here we are in Week 11, first round of the playoffs, and Oak Harbor a 9-1 record, Genoa a 6-4 record. So this is a 6 seed versus 11 seed, but it seems a lot tighter than that.
Yeah, two great teams and 2 local teams that you're going to see a lot of people at this game, and I think Oak Harbor. I made a little switch in my pick. I feel Oak Harbor is going to get a little revenge here. I see them hitting their stride defensively as well. I think they've definitely progressed.
Both of these teams have been battle-tested. Your strength of schedule is a benefit for both of these teams. Eastwood undefeated, 10-0. They had a royal showdown against Elmwood in the mid part of the season. Eastwood, even though they beat Elmwood, Eastwood is the 3 seed. They're going to take on Fredericktown, and then Elmwood takes on Delta. I got a decent feeling we could see Eastwood versus Elmwood 3 weeks from now in a rematch in the regional semifinals, because both of those teams have prolific playmakers and skill position players, and they play solid defense at times. The matchup between Eastwood and Elmwood went into the 30s and 40s point totals, but both these teams have played well in recent years in the postseason. Yeah,
great football tradition at both of those schools, and we need to see 2 consecutive wins out of those schools for a great rematch with Elmwood and Eastwood.
All right, quickly to Division 6. Cary, the defending champs. They've won 25 games in a row. Margaretta also in this part of the bracket. And then Ottawa Hills and Patrick Henry. We're going to talk about that matchup because that is the local teams. We got the TAC versus the NWOAL. Patrick Henry beat Archbold in the regular season finale. That really propelled them into a 10 seed, a higher seed. Ottawa Hills, the 7 seed, will have home field advantage. But in talking to Coach Chris Hardman earlier this week for Ottawa Hills, he knows this game is going to be a battle.
Yeah, this is going to be a great game. I love what Ottawa Hills is doing. I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for Chris Hardman and Scott Pillarelli, who calls their offense. And there's 2 Pillarellis playing on their offense. I think we got Reddick and Rocco Pillarelli, two Italians playing, and it's what a great name and athletes they are, and they're going to have a great career over at Ottawa Hills as they move forward. As they're both, I believe, a freshman and sophomore there now, but getting some good playing time and making an impact. I like Ottawa Hills in this one. As great as Patrick Henry is and their football tradition, I think this is Ottawa Hills' year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I can see this game going to the fourth quarter. We saw Ottawa Hills with a comeback victory against Eden when they needed it most, and Coach Chris Hartman told me that was so beneficial to have that game where they face adversity because they had a few cakewalks. They destroyed Northwood 41-0, and they needed a game like this to prepare them for the playoffs. So they're going to have their hands full when they take on Patrick Henry.
I thought that Northwood game was a surprising score. Mm-hmm. I had Ottawa Hills winning that game, but I thought that they really dominated a good football team in Northwood. Northwood's traditionally, as you know, won many league titles over there. They have good schemes. Ken does a great job coaching and did not expect the 41-0 score. That just tells you that they can turn it on when they need to.
And we'll finish it up in Division 7, Region 26. Just a couple teams I wanted to spotlight here. Macomb, Coach Chris Algie a few years ago, they won it all, won the state championship. They're 9-1. Their one loss was to Marion Local, which has won 12 state titles, and they are just a machine in every sense of the word. Macomb is the #1 seed. They should not have a problem with Eden, the 16 seed. We just talked about them taking on Ottawa Hills in the finale. And then we have Gibsonburg as the 6 seed taking on Edgerton, the 11 seed. Wanted to bring up Gibsonburg because running back Connor Smith, one of the top when it comes to statistics, 2,000-plus yards. He is one of the top statistical leaders as a running back, not only in Northwest Ohio, not only in Ohio, in the entire country. He gets the ball and he delivers.
Yeah, it's always great to have those people that you can flip the scoreboard with, and he's one of those kids.
All right, so good luck to all of our teams. So a quick breakdown. The first 2 rounds are at the higher-seeded home field. Then it goes to neutral. So once we're into the third round, it'll be Divisions 1, 2, 3, and 5. 1, 2, 3, and 5 playing on Friday nights. Divisions 4, 6, and 7 will be playing on Saturday nights. All right, so those are the breakdowns, 1 through 7, Divisions 1 through 7. It's time for our next topic.
It's time for the BCSN Nation Podcast Question of the Week. Send us your question on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook using the @BCSN Sports and #BCSN Podcast.
All right, the question of the week. Right to it. Upset picks. Give me a couple teams. Who do you think we should keep an eye on that could be a lower-seeded team and go on a run? Maybe knock off a couple teams and find their way into the third round.
The one that stands out to me is St. John's at Olmsted Falls.
Okay.
I really love the way St. John's is progressing through the year. They are, as you said, definitely battle-tested and could be the best 12 seed in the state of Ohio, which I don't think anybody could argue with. That's the one that stands out to me the most.
All right, and I think you could maybe even take that one step further because I bet you St. John's wants, not only obviously they got to win, but I bet you they want a piece of Anthony Wayne too. This is a battle, I've been using that word a lot, but that's what we're talking about in the playoffs. But there's a rivalry growing there between the track and the NLL, and then especially the final season of the track. I bet you they want to go back down to Anthony Wayne and have another second-round showdown with the Generals. All right, so keep an eye on that, St. John's. And then we have the game of the week breakdown, Findlay and Perrysburg.
It's time to break down the BCSN Nation Podcast Game of the Week. Send us your predictions for who comes away with the victory on Twitter and Instagram using the @BCSN Sports and #BCSN Podcast.
All right, Pat, Findlay at Perrysburg. We saw this matchup way back in week 2. It was somewhat of a blowout, 49-21, so a 4-score game. Perrysburg came out on top at Findlay. First play of the game, a little screen pass to Connor Wallenczak, busting down, got great blocking down the sideline, touchdown right off the get-go. Findlay gets smacked in the face, and they end up falling by 28 points. But it's an easy motivation game if you're Stephen Adams and Findlay. Hey, we lost to them. We got somewhat nothing to lose. We're the 13 seed going on the road to the 4 seed Perrysburg. Let's leave it all out on the floor or on the court, on the field, and find a way to stay in it and then find a way to win at the end.
Yeah, looking at this game, I think Findlay has overly underachieved in this season. They have so much athletic ability and talent on the field, and they have not been able to find chemistry on either side of the football. A 5-5 record for this Findlay football team, nobody would have guessed that going into the season. I would say a bad season for them before the season started. What you'd have thought about 7-3, okay? But 5-5 they're underperforming, obviously. Perrysburg, on the other hand, has done a phenomenal job on both sides of the ball, and I really like, I've said it week after week, I really like what they're doing offensively, giving Tackett's the opportunity to run the football and be productive running the football, and then I called him an above-average passer. He's turned into an excellent passer as it's progressed. And Coach Connor, who's known for a triple option offense and, running the clock, hiding the ball, those type of things, has really progressed over the last 2 years at Perrysburg and has a very dynamic offense and fun to watch.
Connor Wallenczak, TJ Tackett, Jack Bohr, a number of different playmakers, not only on offense, but also on defense. There have been some games, 48-41, overtime game to St. John's comes to mind, where Perrysburg gave up way too many points. They don't want to find themselves in that scenario come Friday night in the first round against Findlay. But this has the makings. I'm talking to a number of Perrysburg players and coaches over the course of the season, and you got the 3 C's, Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland, where a majority of the deep runs, playoff schools, teams come from those areas. But Perrysburg wanted to make a statement that, hey, they got the horses this year, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers. Connor Wallenczak plays both ways in running back and linebacker. He came up with some huge plays over the course of the season on the defensive side of the ball. They're here to say, hey, Northwest Ohio has a D1 team, just like Whitmer and Findlay as well. But they have the capability of going on not just a 1 or 2 win playoff, but even deeper.
Yeah, they definitely have, and they've done it before.
Yeah,
Matt Kriegel has gotten his Perrysburg Yellow Jackets deep into the playoffs, and they've had some phenomenal runs. Back in the day, it was only Northeast Ohio and Southwest Ohio that was the football kings when you talked about Cincinnati and the Cleveland area. Columbus and Northwest Ohio have recently joined the conversation with teams that have made deep runs because of teams like Whitmer, Central Catholic, Perrysburg. It's great to be in that conversation. So
if Whitmer can advance, if Perrysburg can advance, if they pull off some upsets, we could see a Perrysburg-Whitmer matchup in the 3rd round. We'll have to see. But the other teams in that portion of the bracket, Olentangy Berlin, Delaware Hayes, we could see the Dublin-Jerome matchup with Whitmer. We could see a Dublin-Jerome matchup with Perrysburg. If Dublin-Jerome would somehow beat Whitmer, that's another rematch that we could see. And then you get the Springfields, you get the Fairmonts, you get Olentangy Orange, Huber Heights Wayne, Centerville, Clayton Northmont, Dublin Kaufman, and Marysville. So no matter what, if you come out of a region, I don't care what division you're talking about, if you come out of a region, you're going to earn every bit of that reward.
Right, and that's the negative side to the new playoff expansion, because you used to earn the right to get in the playoffs, and that's what I've talked to so many coaches that do not like the 16 playoff region teams, because it was something special to make the playoffs. Matt and I have both touched on it a few times on our show, and now it almost turns into everybody's a winner, everybody gets an opportunity and things like that. And it doesn't mean as much, but like to what you said, you come out of a region right now and you've earned your right to play in the Final Four. And boy, that is a heck of a prize. Yep. And you go through the gauntlet, and then you got to get to the state semifinals and win 2 more games to win it all. So you got to win 6 games to win a state championship. All right, we're looking forward to it. Pat and Matt Kriegel will be joining me on Friday from Steinecker Stadium, Perrysburg Junior High, as they take on Findlay. So we're looking forward to that matchup. We'll see you there. Watch us at 6:30. In addition to that game that will be live on the BCSN Now app and BCSN2, here's the game list as it stands as of the recording of this podcast. We're trying to get 1 or 2 more games on our family of networks, but right now we got Findlay at Perrysburg. We have Patrick Henry at Ottawa Hills. We have North Ridgeville at Anthony Wayne. We have Ashland at Central Catholic, North Royalton at Fremont Ross.
And we are trying, we also have the St. John's at Olmsted Falls game. We're efforting some other ones. If we secure those broadcasts with those athletic departments in the Cleveland area, we will pass that information along to you guys as well. Tune into Sports Nightly, our social media platforms as well. So another busy night on the gridiron in the first round of the playoffs. We are looking forward to all of the games. Best of luck. Represent the 419 and get into the second round. We're looking forward to it, and we'll cover you all the way into the state championships in Canton in early December. For Pat, I am Justin. Thank you for watching the BCSN Nation podcast. We will see you next week.